Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. It's been a little while since we've done a Q&A, so I thought let's do Astral Q&A number 4. First question is from Ryan. Do you have any other psychic type abilities? Seeing, talking to ghosts, spirits, mediumship, telepathy, clairvoyance? Do you meditate, eat vegetarian, and live, quote, a wholesome, pure life? Well, Ryan, I'm afraid I don't meditate or eat vegetarian. I love burgers. As far as a wholesome life is concerned, well, I don't drink alcohol anymore and I try not to cuss too much. During periods when I astral project, I do have flashes of the future, and I can often read people's surface thoughts. I sometimes have to force myself to wait until someone is done posing a question before I answer it. Okay, the next question here is from Heather. The only problem I have is that I experience sleep paralysis. It happened in the past and it scared me a lot. Now I have this fear that I'm going to experience sleep paralysis and relive this encounter again. How do I overcome this fear so I can astral project? This is an interesting question. If you go back in the histories and the writings of ancient cultures like the ancient Greeks and the Egyptians, you'll find that they also experienced sleep paralysis. Science tells us that the brain causes this paralysis while we're sleeping so we don't hurt ourselves by acting out what's happening in our dreams. So it's a natural and healthy phenomenon. What happens is, for whatever reason, you come to full consciousness, but your body is still in that paralysis state. The problem is that sleep paralysis is an ideal state to astral project from. So she's going to have to get over this fear. My advice to her would be to visualize that the sleep paralysis in your mind as you're falling asleep. Imagine yourself being calm during this process. Then imagine willing yourself to float or roll off of your bed without moving your physical self. One note, if you really want to leave the sleep paralysis state, the technique is just to concentrate on moving one finger. Once you've moved that finger, the spell is broken. Next up, we have a question from Lucy. Hello again. You answered that it would be possible to get an answer to a question while astral projecting. So, would it be possible to ask what the cure for cancer is? Of course, she'd also like to know about wisdom, peace, and compassion. Answer. Are you a well-respected medical researcher? If not, even if you were given a cure for cancer, you wouldn't understand it. However, let's assume for a moment that you have a photographic memory, an eidetic memory, and you can memorize a large formula. What would you do with that knowledge? Would you walk into a hospital or a medical research center waving a piece of paper saying that a spirit gave you the cure for cancer while you were astral projecting? You'd be treated as a nut. At any rate, advanced spirits are generally pretty careful about interfering with the physical plane. I think she'd be probably a lot better off having her questions surround her own life and then also those topics like wisdom, peace, and compassion. Next question is from Chad. Hey there. I'm not sure if this question has already been asked or not, but I didn't spot around. I didn't see it anywhere. Is there any food supplement that can enhance astral projection? Is there anything like caffeine that might actually interfere with astral projection? I would say avoid stimulants like caffeine before you want to astral project. You probably should avoid sleeping drugs or strong painkillers unless they are prescribed by your doctor. As far as something that might help astral projection, I experimented with a substance called galantamine. That's GALANTAMINE. It's a little on the expensive side. I bought it from Amazon. I experimented with it and it did work. However, it did have an effect on my blood pressure, so I had to stop using it. But if blood pressure is not a problem for you, you might want to try galantamine. Okay, let's see. Next question is by Dracovalo. Thank you for taking the time to help us beginners out. I've been using binaural beats while trying to astral project. I haven't succeeded yet, and I was wondering if you have ever used binaural beats before and if they have worked for you. Well, I did experience this tech at the Monroe Institute in the 1980s. Bob Monroe called it hemisync. The idea being that this sound would help to sync both hemispheres of your brain. I used it successfully to help deepen some meditations in the past. It did help me project once, but I know some folks who swear by it. So if it's something you're interested in, perhaps you want to give it a shot. Now we have a series of questions by Whiskey Aussie. Hey, thanks for the post. They're super informative, and they're one of my main reference points as I learn how to astral project. I have a series of questions here. Number 1, when dealing with negative energy beings, should we love them? Should we spear them? I'm getting conflicting input, and we addressed this in my last video about astral threats and astral defenses. So I would say take a look at that last video if you really want a complete answer. Number 2, I've been calling on my spirit guide the last couple of weeks as I'm trying to understand their name and build a relationship with them. Before I meet them in astral projection, I'd like to have some sort of contact with them ahead of time. How do I do that? Well, my advice is, first of all, be patient. I know several weeks can seem like a lifetime nowadays, but I'd say be patient. These types of things come in their own time. Don't be surprised if you encounter your spirit guide in your dreams before anything else. His next question is kind of interesting. He went into the vibrational stage and he felt that he was beginning to astral project, but he wasn't in the mood. So he wanted to know how can I make sure I don't astral project when I'm not when I don't want to. That's obviously kind of a funny question because most of the questions I get is I'll do anything to astral project, not how can I stop one. But typically your subconscious mind is what kickstarts these things, which is why when we're falling asleep, we offer ourselves suggestions when we want to astral project. Like, for instance, I used to say to myself, tonight as I fall asleep, tonight as my body falls asleep, my mind will come awake. I will choose to leave my body. I'll go where I want to go, do whatever I want to do. And when I return, I will have full memory of everything that has occurred. So if he wanted to stop it, then all he'd have to do then is just try to do the opposite of that visualization as you're falling asleep, to try to convince the subconscious that you don't want to do that. However, keep in mind the subconscious isn't always on the same page as the conscious mind. Let's see here. The next question he has, this is about animals. I guess he's curious about animals who are in the spirit and whether he can connect with some of these animals of his on the astral plane. Now, I have seen dogs and cats on the astral plane. However, I don't know if they were projecting or they were deceased. I really haven't spent the time to try to figure that out. I have seen my childhood dog, though, at my parents' house, and she's been dead now since the early 80s. I have noticed, though, that some live animals barked when they saw me in the astral, and some dogs were frightened. Cats normally just kind of eye you up and aren't generally too impressed one way or another. Pretty much that's the difference between cats and dogs. Okay, now this is a serious question here. His mother passed away 6 years ago at an early age in the 40s, which is obviously a tragedy. She was told by a clairvoyant friend of hers that her soul is off learning and growing. He doesn't want to interrupt her studies, but he'd love to see if he could have a connection with her on the astral. What kind of advice do I have? Well, in my experience, it's very possible to contact the newly deceased within the first few weeks. I've said goodbye to my grandmother and my father-in-law that way. However, at this point, it's a different matter. Chances are her soul is in a different plane now, experiencing learning and growth. However, I would say to issue, as you fall asleep at night, an invitation that if it's within her purview of growth, that you could have some contact with her. And perhaps she'll show up in your dream, if nothing else. I'll probably talk more about this particular topic in the future. Next question here. What's your most amazing astral projection? And this is from Rita. Well, that's pretty easy. I've had a lot of them, but for me, the most amazing one that I've experienced is when I wished to look at our Milky Way galaxy from very far outside of it in the intergalactic void. And looking at the breathtaking sight of our lovely galaxy of light while I was hovering in this inky blackness is something that I'm going to carry with me until my last day here on Earth for sure. Next question is by Foromador. What are the limits of travel in the physical world while astral projecting? In any sense of the word, I guess he's looking for, can you go to the Andromeda Galaxy? Can you go further? What types of limits might there be on astral projection? There are limits of where and when you could travel in the astral, but they seem to change as time flows forward. Places that I could go 20 years ago in time are now closed. So I'm unsure as to the logic of this. Most places you can go to, it's just a matter of how sharp and how forceful your will is and how focused you are so that you don't allow some thought to take you off into a different dimension or a different place. For instance, if you want to go visit Stonehenge, but in the middle of visualizing that while you're in the astral, you think about the pyramids for a second, well, you might end up at the pyramids instead. But there are limits. It's just I don't have any hard and fast rules because I'm not sure what they are. And things seem to change as time rolls forward. So, it's an interesting topic, and hopefully I'll get more information on that in the future. Foromador asked another follow-up question. He asked about, he's heard about the Akashic Records and what's the deal with that? I think I've said in the past, I've never been to the Akashic Records because I've never actually thought about going there. I have had students, though, who did travel there, and other than the fact that it's supposed to hold all the records this iteration of the universe. And I remember when I asked that question once of an ascended being, that's exactly what they said to me. They said that it held all the records of this iteration of the universe. Now, if you look up iteration, you'll see that it implies that there were other universes before this one. I didn't get a chance to ask a follow-up question, but there you go. Okay, Rick, you said you should use your focused will to travel in the astral. How did you travel to that part of space that you were talking about as far as the Milky Way galaxy? I mean, how did you visualize getting yourself just to that emptiness? In that case, I just merely wished to be out in the middle of the intergalactic void while looking back at our galaxy. So it was a pretty general idea, and I ended up in some general space. The more specific you get, the more specific you should arrive. The more general your arrival spot. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. This is from King Broseph. He said in Robert Monroe's last book, he talks about traveling inside the body as opposed to exploring the cosmos. Have you ever done anything like this? I remember Bob talking about his interior travels and his interest in that back in the 80s. I don't really have any such interest, and I have never done that. Okay. Macabre Her asks a couple questions here. How do I break the sensation when I'm close, but don't know if I move my physical body and wake up? In other words, how do you leave your body without moving your physical body? It's a challenging way. It's a challenging topic. And if I could transmit the information telepathically, I could tell you exactly how to do it. Unfortunately, English breaks down. The best thing I could say is that while your physical body is paralyzed, you have to exert your maximum amount of focused will in willing yourself to be outside of your body. Because the movement here is a factor of will, not a factor of nerves and muscles. So that's really the best way I can actually describe that. Okay, and this is a question that comes up a lot too. This is also from her. Is it possible to interact with the physical realm while you're in the astral? As a rule, the physical body is designed for the physical world. The astral body is designed for the astral world. That being said, it is rarely possible to interact with the physical while in the astral, but it takes an enormous energy cost. I moved a plastic oven dial because I left my body, went into the kitchen, and I saw that our oven was still on. And so I moved it just a fraction of an inch, maybe a centimeter, to turn it off. And to do that, I had to focus my will and pour every bit of energy that I had. When I returned to my physical body, I was so weak for 24 hours. It was like I had the flu. It also felt like I had one of the worst hangovers I ever had from a wild party. So it's something that is possible, but it takes one heck of a lot of energy and will in order to make it actually happen. Okay, one more question here. And this is from Saucepan Magician. I am the father of 3 little kids. Do you have any tips about how I can protect or shield them from negative energies? Do lower vibrational entities feed on my children and my family, causing nightmares and such? Can I astral project and then seek out these things and make them go away? Well, as a father myself of a 26-year-old wonderful daughter who you met before, she's a physician's assistant and she also astral projects, I can understand the protectiveness that he is feeling. How can he shelter his children. My best advice would be teach your children to be strong-willed, but with open minds. Teach them to emphasize and feel empathy to help others. Teach them to trust themselves and not be afraid to try and fail. Teach them to treasure knowledge, but not to forget to experience the world away from computers and books. That's probably the best advice I can offer. Build them as individuals. By hovering over them too closely, all you'll do is you'll make them dependent upon you and you'll stunt their growth. Well, that's the Q&A for this time. I hope you enjoyed some of those questions and maybe it helped you with one that you had yourself. If you liked this video, please hit that like, thumbs up. If you know somebody who would benefit from this, please share it. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and smash that bell button. And please continue to comment because I get all kinds of good ideas through your comments, and I enjoy answering the questions as well. This is Rick, and as always, I will see you on the astral plane.